I sat there and I smoked the crack and I drank the liquor and I was just sober. So, I mean, it was like, it was going to take a lot more to get me where I needed to be at. And so I knew that I was very, very sick.
All right. So glad we're here, man.
Thank you guys so much for being on the Recovery Val podcast. I'm excited about today because I've got two of my best friends on here. I've got Ryan McDermott and John Tyler Black, a.k.a. the JT. And I've known you for
10, 11, 12 years.
Somewhere in there. It's double digits now. Mm-hmm. And then Ryan, you and I became friends probably 6 years ago. Yep. And what I love about our friendship is you allow me to kind of be a little bit of me outside of the doors of the church, where we can kind of just talk real talk and play golf and just humor. And so that's what I love about you guys. You help me just to remember that I need to be a good Christian leader, but I can also just be myself.
We can also have a little bit of fun.
Yeah. So that's
what
we're going to do today.
can have fun too.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to have fun, but I wanted to tell you guys, I mean, you guys know a lot about my story, but I wanted to kind of just go back and talk about dads and generational bondage and small groups. One thing that you told me a long time ago, JT, and I'll never forget this, you are who you surround yourself with, even to the things you watch on TV and the music you listen to.
Yeah.
And I get that. Like, I still listen to my stuff from, like, when I was younger.
Eddie Vedder. Edward
I'm so
Vedder.
proud of you right now.
I can't tell you I know any of the songs, but...
Well, yeah.
Fleetwood Mac.
I don't know her.
Gosh, such a great
Still
album.
got the record label.
Oh, man. Such good stuff. But they didn't drive me to drink, but it puts me in times where I would remember it. I started drinking alcohol. My first blackout drunk was about 13 years old in a little town in South Carolina, and I wanted to fit in. Like, I wanted to hang out with an older crowd because I felt like if I hung out with an older crowd, I would be viewed as like this super cool person. But then I was blacked out drunk, laying in somebody's yard. But I drank and became addicted to drugs from 13 to 30. I would black out drink on the weekends, hanging out with friends, and I thought it was just like the thing to do. Wagner's very small, and so there wasn't a whole lot to do.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of order. I was raised by a single mom, and she worked 2 jobs and had 3 kids to care for, and so my days were really free. I didn't have any order in my life, and when you don't have order, you have chaos, and so I could really do whatever I wanted to do whenever I wanted to do it. She didn't get home till late at night. Like, we fixed our own dinners and took care of ourselves and got ourselves ready for school. And if I went to school that day, I mean, a lot of times we skipped school. This is elementary school.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, was this, how old were you?
Elementary school.
Yeah.
This was the majority of my life until I was 13 when she got married again. And so, but yeah, I started dipping at Skull Wintergreen long cut. So, man, I started dipping at a young age, and we were drinking at a young age.
That's the most
I was
Cleveland
kind of
thing.
similar, the same.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you got to have that on your birth
if you're
certificate.
in Cleveland, you got to dip. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't have the ring around your jean pocket, then I don't even know if you're from Cleveland.
Probably not.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But I dipped up until I was, 24, 25.
Spit in a bottle, carried around with you everywhere?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't carry my back pocket. I wasn't red like that.
Yeah.
I was kind of preppy too. You know what I'm saying? I was a preppy dipper.
Yeah, I like your outfit today, buddy.
Yeah. I figured it'd be nice
Kennedy.
for the attire.
As preppy as Cleveland can get, yeah.
Yeah. When I was 17, we robbed a company. It was a beer truck company in Cleveland. I won't name the name. But we
Has
stole
the statute of limitations passed yet?
about
While you're telling me?
57 cases of alcohol out of these trucks. We had a buddy that was small
Like
enough
Smokey and the Bandit?
to be able to fit. No, he wasn't driving.
Okay.
He was parked. It was at the distribution place. And so we had a buddy that was small enough to get inside the small hole in the cab. And so went through that, just started handing us the cases out of it. So we stole 57 cases. Yes. And then when they found out who it was, they took us to court, and the judge was like, "Hey, we need to get some of that alcohol back. Whatever liquor and alcohol you have, we need to get that back." And we're like, "Oh, there's not any left."
What'd you do with it? You drank it?
We drank it.
You drank all of that?
We drank it, yeah.
So this kind of shift gears a little bit. In your line of work now,
Yeah.
You work with a lot of young adults, kids, and you talked about, experimenting with these things when you were in elementary school. Are there things that you do in your ministry to try to safeguard those kids or try to reach those kids that you feel like may have issues with addiction or
Yeah.
see it coming?
I think for me, it's more about not having a father in the picture, and not helping to kind of give me guidance. I didn't really
You're just
have
sensitive
anyone
to
giving
that.
me guidance. Yeah.
I feel like dads play a huge role.
Huge role in that. There's so many different aspects of life to where you can grow, more as a man whenever you have that male role model in your life. At a young age, I remember, actually, I have a paper at home that I wrote down to my future child whenever I was 12 on the father that I was going to be. And so, like, I made all these promises. I would be at every game. They would never have to question if they were loved. And I would
still
be a
have
part
that?
of it. I still have it, yeah. I remember, though, at an early age that I made the decision that I was going to be, like, the best father that I could be, the best man that I could be. Everything that I didn't have, I was going to be. And so now in ministry, a passion of mine is just making sure that everybody feels loved and that they have somebody that's here for them, a voice to be able to speak into your life, not just on Sundays, but also on the weekdays if it's needed. That's my job, and that's probably my favorite part about the job is just to be able to speak into other people's lives and make them feel like somebody loves them and cares.
Do you get a chance to hang out with dads and, just kind of coach them? Because we don't know what we're doing until we're kind of in it,
I don't know if anybody really knows what we're doing. It's at least for me, because I didn't have really the example to follow. So I'm still trying to figure that out. I've got twin boys that are 18 that are about to go to college, and a 16-year-old daughter, and now the 7-year-old daughter, and I know how to parent her.
Yeah.
But when we had the three, Brooklyn and I, we felt like we were being raised ourselves whenever we were trying to raise them, because we were living pretty wild life whenever we first got married, and then we get hit with twins 4 months into our marriage.
Boom.
But it's hard. You don't really know how to parent if you don't have a model to follow, you know.
I get that.
And so we feel like we're just trying to fill a void where we felt like what we were missing in our life, and that's where we try to fill it in the most. And sometimes you fill it a little bit too much, because you try to overcompensate for things that you might not have had.
Right.
And then that, sometimes that can kind of affect, give it a negative effect. But I think for the most part, my kids know they're loved. They got a dad that's there for them, that will not only is their friend, but also their father, somebody that's their discipline, lead them in the right way. And
I think that's such
not
the
always
hard
the easiest.
balance. I mean, we grew up in the same town, you and I did. Our experiences were different, and you were talking about, my life and your life do not align much.
I
But
love you to death. I would have never hung out with you when I was younger if we were the same age.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Ryan,
I don't
maybe.
know if you'd want to, honestly.
Yeah. Maybe
If
Ryan.
you'd want to hang out with Eric.
So
Me and
yeah,
Eric
I
would have
mean,
been boys. We would have been pretty tight.
I know JT has probably the cleanest whistle past, but
We lived basically the same life.
oh, that's right. You were a drug lord in your past life.
I was. I think it goes to a lot of what we're doing now as dads. I had that great example. My parents were great, mom and dad both, but we're speaking specifically to the dad part. He was such a rock star, and he never missed a game. He never missed a practice. Dad, if you're watching, I know I beat you early on in basketball 101. I mean, but you were always playing with me outside. He was great. He was always present, at a young age. I remember first, second grade, my dad was a minister at the time, and so that's what I wanted to be. We shared a while back at our men's conference, a family unit was 17% likely to go to church by the mother's influence. By the child's influence, it was 22% that the family unit would go together, that they would attend church regularly. If the father attended under his influence, a family unit is 94% more likely
That's staggering.
to attend church. And so, when we were looking through those stats, and there's so many more that mirror that, but just the importance of that father figure in your life, whether it's going to church or grades being important or, staying committed to your sport. My wife and I, we had a conversation a while back. Our daughter was in dance, and she was just miserable. But I just remember from my dad, like, hey, you start something, you're going to finish something. And so we finished through this semester, and it was so bad.
Dance is
so
miserable.
bad.
I feel like if she wants to quit, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. You want to quit? We'll quit.
Yeah.
But it
Dance
was
is
just
tough.
something that, like, we wanted to instill in her, hey, you made a commitment.
Yeah.
And is it that important for, at the time, I think she was 6 or 7, to be committed to dance? No, it's not. But I think that's just a mentality that you instill in your children of, hey, you need to show up for the things you're committed to, and that's something that we often run into now as ministers, like doing events and things like, just being non-committal, always looking for the better offer, those sorts of things that we just run into from people in general. But if you can instill that in your kids, just the principles, the moral, outside of the morals too, but just the integrity that you want them to have, the different things in life. But
hey guys, thanks so much for joining us today on the Recovery Valve podcast. I want to give a special shout out and a thank you to Andrew and Natasha Lasatter from Texas. They own Atlas Health and Fitness, and Andrew and I became friends at the EXO conference. I'm just so proud of them and the work they're doing, and I just want to say a special thank you so much for your sponsorship to this podcast. I could not do what I'm doing without your help. Thank you so much, Atlas Health and Fitness.
And one of the things I admire about you're talking through AA and stuff, and I really treasure about you is like your ability to be over the top vulnerable, probably too vulnerable. And I'm sometimes
just so open.
Growing up a pastor's kid, I felt like I lived in a fish bubble, and it was like everybody was they were waiting for me to mess up, and so that's like something, it just doesn't even compute with me.
I got you.
And so like I'm very private. My struggles are going to be my struggles, and nobody even to tell my wife, like that's something we've been processing through the last month or so. Is just my lack of ability to be vulnerable with people in general. Yeah. But I love it about the recovery community and work with small groups over the last 10 plus years. Done a lot with you and your time for recovery, celebrate recovery. The recovery community understands doing life together better than anybody else I've seen. They're open and vulnerable with folks in a way that just a normal Bible study doesn't get to very quickly, but it's a necessity in that setting. And it's not in a frivolous way, but there's a purpose behind all of it. And you were asking me earlier today, about small groups specifically. Are there enough recovery groups? And I would say, at least, at our church, there's never enough small groups in general, but it's specifically recovery groups. And I would say that people in general don't feel qualified to lead a small group or to lead a discipleship element in the first place. Yeah. But especially when you add in elements of recovery, I think you see that number of people who feel quote unquote qualified drop dramatically. And I would just encourage those watching, lead when you can. There's a certain wisdom in sobriety and knowing yourself and all that. There's wisdom in that. But I would just encourage those watching in that sense of, if you're at a church, if you're leading a church, the recovery community does this better than anybody else. AA, it's founded on biblical principles, but they do it better than anybody else. So keep up the great work and don't be shy of being an example for the rest of us.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I appreciate that. I told you this, and I meant it. That's the reason I wanted to put it on paper, as a legacy thing, so that people, if they wanted to start a recovery group, they would have something that they could just keep conversation going. And then it's kind of grown into this
well,
marriage.
When this podcast turns into a movie or a Netflix series,
right?
I call being the cartel drug lord. That's going to be my role.
Jean Tyler.
You could, we'll make it happen. Yeah. Tell you a little bit about my story, what addiction was like for me. So when I got out of high school, I had the opportunity to move to Augusta, Georgia. Worked my first real job where I could afford to live on my own. And that's when I really started experimenting with other drugs. I was fired from my job for smoking marijuana. And my stupid thinking was, well, I can switch from this drug that takes 30 days to get out of me to maybe I can do cocaine because it stays in you for 3 days, And so that's the way my mind worked. And so I switched from marijuana. I don't think I smoked as much pot as I used to, but then I switched to cocaine. And that's when, I really got into drugs. Cocaine did something for me that I'd never felt before. Yeah. So I started doing a lot of cocaine, probably to the point where it was maybe a couple $100 throughout the week, for what I could afford. And then I started doing it alone, and then I started doing it in the morning time. And then I found out that 3-day drug, I was thinking in my mind that if I did it on Thursday or Friday, if I got a drug test by Monday, I could pass it. And I didn't. I failed. I failed another drug test, and so I got fired from that job. And this was not too long after September 11th, 2001.
I filled an application at a cable communications position in Cleveland, Tennessee, Cox Cable. And
Shout out
COX.
Cleveland, Tennessee.
Shout out
That needs to be
Cleveland,
the
Tennessee.
title of this episode. Two
College
Cleveland
cable?
boys.
Oh,
Two Cleveland, Tennessee boys on the same.
Cleveland representing.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, so I had taken some ecstasy.
what?
Right. So I thought that it would take 2 to 3 days to get out of my system. I was like, okay, I'm not going to smoke weed. I'm not going to do anything else. I'll take the ecstasy because it only takes a few days to get out of my system. I'll take the drink. I had that drink that you could buy online that'll,
Clean you
kind
up.
of clear it. I didn't do the I didn't do the fun dip.
Dip.
So I went in, I took my drug test, and then a few days later, I got hired. She called me, was like, hey, you got the job. You'll start this week. You'll do orientation, da-da-da-da. And she calls me back 2 days later and was like, hey, so you got the job, but your drug test came back. And heroin showed up in your system. And I was like, I've never done heroin a day in my life. And she was like, well, it's in your drug test. And I was like, I have no idea how that got there. And I was like, well, wait a minute.
Did you mix them up?
Wait a minute.
Did you take a lace
So now
ecstasy pill?
ecstasy has a mixture of MDMA, cocaine. It could have heroin in it. It could have they have different mixtures of ecstasy. Like you could get different sizes, different types. You could get double stack, single stack, but they would all have something. Some would have acid, some would have more uppers.
I didn't know that.
They'd be laced with something different. And so
Start calling him Walter White over
and
here.
I was like, it cleared everything out of my system except for that piece of heroin or whatever rock that was in there. It's wild.
Is
So when you were saying that, I was like,
So did
I had
you
the
get the
same
job
thing.
or no?
I didn't get the job. No, I was like,
But they wouldn't let you know if you're going anywhere else. You need to get this heroin out of your system.
yeah, I need to get the heroin out.
Like the summertime of 2010, I worked for the little town of Wagner, and I was drinking during the day, and I was smoking crack during the day. And I'll never forget the mayor of the town. He was the first person that ever asked me this, and he said, "Are you an alcoholic?" And I was taken back for a minute. And I said, "No, sir, I don't think so. Why would you ask that?" He said, "Because you're drunk right now." And he sent me home.
You say, no, that's just the crack.
That's just crack, bro.
Alcohol's for later.
Alcohol's
The
for later.
Crack was this morning. Alcohol's later. Definitely
Yeah.
not drunk.
Because I loved it in the morning. I
Yeah.
love crack in the morning. I love liquor in the morning. And I love watching the Golden Girls in the morning. It reminded me of my grandma. Not the crack or the liquor, but the Golden Girls.
I was about to say.
Yeah. And
Stories got different.
that night I went to the Piggly Wiggly and I bought 3 bottles of Tylenol PM because I remember watching a Cat Williams stand up and he said, if you take enough Tylenol, it'll be the last headache you have. And I committed to taking all those pills. And I did. I don't think I took every one of them, but I know I took at least a full bottle and a half with a pint of liquor or a liter of that night. The next morning I woke up like at 6 o'clock in the morning, like it was just a good nap. Nothing happened. And so I went to the dope man's house, and this was the last time I ever smoked crack or drank liquor. And he gave me $60 for free, like a front, because I didn't have any money. And I went to a cemetery on that same dirt road that I wrecked on, and I sat there and I smoked the crack and I drank the liquor, and I was just sober. So, I mean, it was like it was going to take a lot more to get me where I needed to be at. And so I knew that I was very, very sick. And by this time, I went back to the trailer that I lived in, and I looked in the living room, and there was just empty liquor bottles everywhere. I had turned my own water off because I didn't pay the water bill. Urine in cups on counters. I mean, it was just it was a pigsty. I laid on the bed, and there was a phone book on the floor, and I called Alcoholics Anonymous. And I told them this whole story with a bunch more included. And I said, I've got an issue. And I gave them my insurance information. And I was able to get into treatment. They said, yeah, we'll fly you down today. You just get to the airport. We'll tell you the flight number. Well, about this time, the mayor pulled up in my driveway and 2 police officers. And I went to jail for panhandling. When I ran out of money or didn't have grass to cut, I would borrow money and I wouldn't pay people back. Mm-hmm. I spent 2 weeks in jail. I got out and I called that same place back because Judge Williamson said, look, you're going to go to prison for 4 months or you've got to get help. And they said, well, you did 2 weeks in jail. I said, yeah. They said, we can't take you. You detoxed. That's considered detox in jail. And I called another place. It was Florida Center for Recovery. I told them the whole story and what I'd just done. And they said, get on a plane tomorrow and we'll fly you down. And so I got to spend one day with the boys. And because at this point I was seeing them, I think, every other weekend. And my
How
dad,
old were they then?
Christian was 3 and Cameron was 4.
So they didn't really understand what was happening, what was going on.
But when we would ride by the liquor store, he would say, Daddy, there's your store. You know, so he started knowing little bits of stuff.
Right. Do they remember anything now? Like today, they remember any of that?
Thank goodness they don't. But I tell them everything.
Yeah.
So I went down to Florida. I spent 30 days in Florida, and it was like hitting, I call it like the life's biggest reset button. And I did 30 days there, and then I went into a sober living facility in Lexington, South Carolina after that. Yeah, I started seeing the boys every other weekend, and then, me and their mom got back together about 3 months later, and our marriage lasted for about 9 months. And she's a great woman. She's a great mom. It just didn't work out. And we got divorced, and she let me take custody of the boys. And so me and Cameron and Christian, we moved into an apartment, and we started over, and I went to 12-step program and worked, through that. Started my recovery process, and I didn't feel lost, but I was doing a lot to be a provider and try to, be a better, and not have, drinking or using. And then I got an invitation to church, and it was during Easter. And even though I had these walls put up, I came, and, the first 3 Sundays, I cried. I cried the first Sunday. Pastor Marty Baker was delivering a message, and it's like he knew how to speak the 12 steps, and I heard it in his message, and I was bawling. And fast forward through that, I met my wife.
A love story. I remember that when y'all got together.
Yeah, that's when we kind of met. You wouldn't hang out with me until I had a wife, but after that, we were friends.
And we did go to pizza joint.
That was our first double date. Yeah. I remember that. And I appreciate that because I started to understand the power of a small group.
Yeah.
JT and Ryan, we've had a great conversation, but if you had the opportunity to talk to yourself when you were younger, would you give yourself advice, and what would that advice be?
But really falling in love with reading the Bible in a different way.
So you would have dove in earlier, in middle school?
Yeah, and I read the Bible in a way, I would sit up with Mom, with Dad, I would memorize stuff for the Gold Star and things. I did it on such a way that was just manufactured and for the wrong reason, like on The Bachelor, for the wrong reasons. I was there for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
But
I wish I had done the same thing.
It's something I've really tried to make a priority this year. I can't fathom the love of God, and that's just something that I've identified that I've been wrestling with, of accepting it, being good enough in a way, and you're never good enough as a believer. Only Jesus helps with that. But understanding the love of God is past the things I do, but He just loves me, the fatherly type of a love.
Sure.
And learning that through loving the Scripture and understanding the larger story at a bigger picture.
Oh man, mine would probably be accept discipline, hold yourself accountable, and be more aware of who you circle yourself around.
That's good.
Yeah, that's really good.
I really mean this when I say it. I really love you guys because of your friendship and because of your transparency and because you just hold me accountable. I've messed up before, and Ryan's come in here and we had conversations. I've messed up before, and JT comes and has conversations. And it's not just work stuff. It's
he's messing up. We're not messing up.
Yeah.
There's not enough time on the episode for that. But, I needed that my whole life, and so to have it now. That's why I'm so open and vulnerable to listen, is because I'm still learning. I've been going to church here for 12 years. I've been on staff here for 9. I look at myself as a 12-year-old Christian. I told you in the beginning that when I started drinking, I was 13, and when I got sober, I was 30. And so I'll celebrate 14 years in September.
Let's go.
But I'm a very young Christian, and I'm only 20, almost 20-something years old as far as just doing life.
You're a lot older than that.
Yeah.
You're in your mid-60s, 70s.
If I look this good in mid-60s, I'll take it. I'll take it. But anyway, I do appreciate you guys coming on the episode today, and I just appreciate your friendship. So thank you guys for coming on and hearing me out. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Recovery Vow podcast. I'd love to connect with you. If you would like to connect with us, you can reach us on our Instagram page at Recovery Vow. And on that page, we have a link that you can pre-order your book for your marriage after recovery, getting our life back together. You can also check us out on our website at recoveryvow.com, or you can email me direct at recoveryvow@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to getting with you again soon. Today's episode is brought to you by Goldmec, Newsom Electric, S&S Supplies, Carpet Cleaning Pros of Augusta, Rhett Walker, Atlas Health and Wellness, Norval Fixture and Appliance, Augusta Lawn and Turf, the Augusta Dream Center, Bagwell Insurance, Sally Kohler Photography, Burrow Elijah Attorney at Law, Communigraphics, Kendra Neal Studio, Kendrick Paint and Body. Sponsors, thank you so much. This podcast would not be possible without your support.